Hello, Whodats, and welcome into the Whodat Confessional Podcast, episode 661, hitting you in the middle of May, the most important month in football history. Just kidding. It's the middle of, we talking about anything? Actually, we are talking about stuff today. In fact, today is episode 661, but more important than that, it's Thursday, and as we've been doing here on Thursday, we have the phone lines will be open today. So if you want to get your voice, your opinion, your thoughts on what we're talking about today, all you got to do is join into the Discord, and we will bring people up to the stage when we're talking about various topics. It doesn't cost you a dime, and you get to get your opinion heard by literally dozens of people. It's a little bit more than that. Let's just be real. We still have a pretty nice user base who watches the channel. We're going to talk about film study just a little bit. I do expect y'all to have watched the two film studies I've put out on Foskey and on our brother from another mother. We're giving him that level of love because he's a first-round draft pick, and we expect great things out of our first-rounders because recently has not been the case. But we've also taken a look at the man that I'm calling Breezy because I'm trying to speak his Hall of Fame career into existence. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well as listen to the sweet ASMR sounds of me combing my beard, apparently. So welcome into the show. Hopefully y'all having an amazing, I really do hope y'all are having an absolutely amazing Thursday. It's been good for me. So hopefully it is going well for y'all. TJ, if you want to do your normal thing and come hop in, if you can, to the Discord to help kind of moderate the chat, that's appreciated. If you can't do it, don't worry. I feel you. Sometimes it can get a little bit crazy in there. But let's get some Whodats to those who are here live. I know we got Beacon, Tadoc, Troll was in the live already kind of trying to set up. We've also got Lester, Rainey, Gerald, Devon Q, Marie, TJ, Chase, Rudy, Jimbo, James, everybody, welcome in Whodat to you. Hope you're having an amazing day. Hope y'all are having a wonderful Thursday. So we're going to talk a couple of topics. We've got Michael Thomas. Will he actually play? Will he be ready for training camp? I know that's going to be a little bit of a hot button, especially because TJ is going to come in and be like, it don't matter, get rid of him. And then you have other people who want to root for him because of how amazing he was in the past. I think there's a wrong answer. Drew Brees hosting the first annual Pickleball Fest. That's news. That's how you know it's May. Drew Brees, a former quarterback, hosting pickleball. That's how you know the news is running a little bit slow, but don't worry. I think our topics are good. And we've also got Kirk Merritt hosting their first annual food drive. So shout out to that. We got the Drew Brees Foundation playing pickleball, and then we've got Kirk Merritt doing food drives. We also got to talk about will Michael Thomas be ready. We did have a couple of comments come through on that in terms of Mickey Loomis talking about it, which I guess is good. And Mickey Loomis was not the only one. DA was talking about it. And we're also going to discuss over what y'all think, what y'all have watched. I'm going to assume that my followers here on the Whodat Confessional Podcast have not only watched the film studies that I've put out, they've watched or read the film studies that others have put out, and have gone and done extra research to formulate their own opinions. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting that we've got some pretty nice, intelligent, measured responses about to come onto this chat tonight. I'm setting myself up for disappointment, I know. But that's my expectation. So we're going to see if that's actually what we end up getting. We're going to start with the film study. I did release one today. If y'all missed it, go check it out. Our man Brezzy, or as I've been calling him, and getting corrected because people don't like that I call people's names wrong, Breezy, coming in to be your new 3-tech defensive tackle. I think you saw a few different plays of, in my opinion, really good play when he was at Clemson in today's video, really kind of focusing on the fact that he can help with the twist stunt game coming in, that he has, at least a working knowledge of that. Obviously, he wanted to be as good as possible. He's definitely going to get better. He's not coming in at the end of the first round of being elite. There's things that need to be worked on, but I do think that he can still provide a presence. And then also, we had, a week ago, or maybe, no, actually that's about a week and a half, because we did a Foster Moreau film study after he got signed. We did one on our man Foskey. It's like he's from Boston. Foskey. And I think he can provide an immediate impact along the edge. So we're going to start with that. Now, go ahead and let y'all know. We're going to open the floor up now. TJ, if you want to come on stage, you don't need to talk the whole time. Just obviously if we want to do any call-ins. If y'all do want to be a part of it, link is in the chat right now if y'all want to jump in and give your thoughts, give your opinions. Basically, what do you predict these two can provide, if anything? Do you feel like you don't trust the Saints staff? Do you have problems with the fact that the guy I made the film study on today, Brian Breezy, made a comment that most of his injuries have come from playing on turf. Well, not sure if he's aware of what we play on in New Orleans, but it ain't grass. Does that concern you at all? Are you concerned about the Saints medical staff? John Sigler made a post on Twitter today, said, what positional group is most interesting for you rolling into this season? And I jokingly, but at the same time not jokingly, said the medical staff, just because, well, hasn't exactly gone to plan lately. And I thought it was a good question. That was a fair question, but at the same time, I wanted to hit him with, the truth. I just feel like if I want to really see how successful this team is, that's what it comes down to. It really is. I honestly think it comes down to that. If the medical staff does their jobs, and maybe they do their jobs, and honestly, beyond that, the Saints are healthy. That's what we're looking for. And sure, we don't know enough to just go and throw things at and blame them for every individual problem. Maybe not. And I'm not trying to say that. But what I am saying is this has been a team of the past few years, especially collectively, combined the past years, one of the most injured teams in football. And that's just oof. That's just a oof. TJ, good to see you, man. Thank you for coming in and help with the stage in case anybody else wants to come up and give their opinion. I'm sure you've got an opinion on how these two can perform. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think in regards to, I don't even know how to pronounce it, Rasee, whatever,
Yeah.
and Flosky. I have more expectation, or not expectation, but I guess like I can see more coming from Brzee earlier because I feel like he is more prototypical, and I think he could start. Like I don't know why he wouldn't. And I think he's got a pretty good tool set. I'd be lying if I said that I like from the beginning wanted him. Not that I didn't want him, but I think I was pretty vocal with like wanting Kalijah Cansey if
Mhm.
Jalen Carter was a possibility. And I don't think he's as good as Kalijah Cansey from a skill set perspective in terms of like level of polish. Uh,
Yeah.
Even though he probably has what at least 20 pounds on Cansey, so that's a start or like that's a plus. But I mean, I like his tool set that he's got. Like you mentioned, his ability to execute the twists and the stunts is good. And I think he'll be pretty solid against the run. I was a little bit more high on Foskey before watching his tape. After watching his tape, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's going to be like at least a year away before he really makes like a serious impact. I think in year one he'll be more of kind of a situational guy, and I think if
Mhm.
he has to start, then I don't really see that playing out well, which isn't great because Peyton Turner has done next to nothing. But I just don't see it. I think he's got the frame to put on weight, which is a positive because he's already like kind of prototypical size. But I just see him as more of a situational pass rusher as opposed to being able to stand pat against the run at least day one. So my expectation for him is kind of on the lower end. I know you brought up Michael Thomas, and I just have to bring this up because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was talking about Michael Thomas in Week 13. But the ironic part is Michael Thomas won't be playing in Week 13, so they won't be guarding or jawing or slap boxing or anything like that because Michael Thomas will have been on IR for 10 weeks. So that's kind of what I have on Michael Thomas.
I
But
love that you've been picking up the slack when Godfather's been gone. You've been hitting us hard with the negatives, and I appreciate you keeping the energy because somebody's got to do it. So
someone's got to do it. It has to be me. Hate that it has to be me. Someone's got to do it.
I think that Foskey's going to end up at a necessity getting a lot more reps than maybe playing for. I have no issue with Foskey because it's just the same idea as drafting Turner and Davenport, but I'm very happy to do that at pick 40 versus doing that at pick 14, right? So in terms of the scouting report, there's really not a ton of difference between the three. I mean, there's a slight difference between, hey, maybe you think that Foskey has some better move. He definitely has a better move set than Davenport did coming out, but maybe you like some of Davenport's explosiveness and just sheer size, coming out. I mean, depending on what all the fence on. At the same time, you drafted the same player three times. Now, Different layers of that. One, we can hit it from the, well, hell, do the Saints even know how to draft that player? Two, are they even able to develop that player if they do draft him? They do have the upside. And then three, when you did it previously, you at least had like some people originally, like you had at Alex Okafor and you were working towards that next guy and stuff. And now I don't really feel like you have an option. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but Carl Granderson is not a full time starter. I think he's a good rotational piece, but I don't want Carl Granderson starting for New Orleans, 70% of the snaps as the, weak side defensive end or, backside in this case. Nor do I think Peyton Turner has given you any type of reason to be confident that he can do it. So I think no matter what, it's an open training camp battle. If you're talking about like what starting positions or things that you should be watching, this is a starting position to watch. Who's going to be that starter? And regardless of what Saints fans might think, number 2 corner is a spot. Number 2 defensive end is a spot. Who's going to be that number 3 linebacker for when they actually get base? That's a big spot. There's a lot of starting spots slash significant snap spots that are going to be up for grabs this year. We'll see what it looks like. And I don't ever really jump on board with the whole injury thing because I think that happens. But I do think that regardless of it being New Orleans, I do think there's a history that shows turf is a problem. And it would be nice if at some point New Orleans moves away from that and every other team does, because that just seems from an injury perspective to be a consistent problem. And you've even seen these type of, whether it be soft tissue injuries, lower body injuries, pretty consistently in New Orleans for a wide swathing amount of players. So hopefully that's something that can get rectified. And by the way, Chad, if you're watching live, y'all have more than every opportunity. And if y'all want to, come jump in and give your thoughts. Gerald says, I was hoping for 3 or 4 sacks from Breezy and 5 from Foskey. If that opposite DN can give us 10 between Foskey and Granderson, it's a good look. Not counting on Turner for anything. I will say that, while I'm not counting on Turner, I'm also not writing him off. Please remember that. I told y'all the same thing about Cesar Ruiz. 3rd year is a big year. Now, I will say that Cesar Ruiz was probably better in his first 2 years than Turner's been in his first 2 years. The problem with Turner is, again, injury. Turner's not playing a lot of games. His first season, you only saw him 5. Last year, you only saw him 8. He's got 3 combined sacks in his career. If he can actually stay on the field, he has flashed. But again, I know so many people are tired of that. Like, you're just tired of flashing. Nobody wants to hear about a guy that's flashing. You want to see some consistency. You want to see some development. But that is kind of where we're at. We're still talking about a team last year that put up 48 sacks in 17 games, those are good numbers. And Caden Ellis had 7 that you're going to have to replace. But if you look on that opposite side, you still hit your mark because Granderson had 5.5, Turner had 2, Passignon had 2. So you still got around that 10 number you were looking for, even though you didn't really get anything from Marcus Davenport and you struggled from the interior. You did end up getting 5 from David Onyemata. They came in kind of like a real spurt towards the end of the year. And then you also had 3.5 from Contavious Street. We'll see what that interior is able to do now because, honestly, the entire defensive line is different than it was last year, except for Cameron Jordan. Your starters, you're going to have 3 different starters along the front, unless I guess you are expecting Malcolm Roach to provide a consistent 3-tech, like he becomes a starter. I doubt it. But Kalen Saunders is probably going to be your next one. You're going to have Cameron Jordan stick to his normal spot, and then you're going to probably be looking at the rookie in Bryant or BB to come in and be that 3-tech, and then you got Carl Granderson, Peyton Turner / Isaiah fighting for that starting spot opposite Cam with Tano, who has played 3 different positions with New Orleans. He slid inside, played 3-tech for some snaps, and he's played both defensive end, probably being your most experienced veteran defensive end as depth. So there's a lot that has to go right for the Saints to go right, but I think that you can look at it 2 ways. It depends on how confident you are in development in New Orleans right now. I will say there's one area that I currently believe in. It's the exact opposite of what it was a decade ago. A decade ago, you could have told me just about any offensive player joins this team, like, hey, they contribute because Sean Payton's here. Right now, and I am not saying in terms of head coaching, they're on the same level. But when it comes to coordinating and running an actual unit, I am extremely confident in DA from the defensive side of the ball to make things happen and to take what he has and find the best in those players. Because it's what he's actually been doing for the past, 6 years now. The worst the Saints defense has been in terms of points allowed in the past 6 years is 14th. That's the worst, y'all. We can easily take up snippets in Saints history where there's 6 straight years where they didn't do better than 14th. And you could look, actually looking at it right now, 2006, you went 13, then 25, 26, 20. Then you went down to 7, up to 13, then 31. And then you had the 1 year in 2013 where you were 4th, but then the next year 28, then the next year 32, then the next year 31. So, I mean, the consistent level of success that you have had is really only equal to what you had in the late 80s, early 90s with the Dome Patrol defense. Now, that defense was obviously better as a whole. I'd argue that's probably one of the best defenses of all time. But in terms of what DA has done, he's done enough for me to trust him as a defensive coordinator, even though we maybe don't trust him. Not even maybe. Let's just keep it real. We don't trust him yet as a head coach. We just don't. And I think most people in chat will have the same thing. No Cap says, I want the Saints to get Quan, Hunter, Leonard Floyd, and move Penning to right tackle or guard if he struggles at LT and let Ram play LT. No Cap, man. All those moves that you just made would really hurt me. Like, I'm not moving Ramczyk to left tackle unless it's like ungodly obvious they have no other option. I think that's a horrible move. You can't just move players on the offensive line and expect them to be good players. And I don't think that would help Penning at all, for sure. I think that Quan Alexander is a guy that, sure, you may sign at the end of camp. You only sign Quan Alexander if every linebacker you have behind Pete Warner and Demario Davis look like trash. And that means DeMarco Jackson, Andrew Sewell, Andrew Dowell, Nephi Sewell, Nick Anderson, who I do want to really root for out of Tulane. Nobody pops off. If nobody pops off, sure, go get Quan. But I don't see the point in bringing in Quan right now. I don't understand the logic. I know the name is something that Saints fans love, seeing the energy. They love the Demario Davis-Quan pairing, and that's fine. But I don't think you bring him in until your guys prove that there is no guy. You know, and it's only because you allowed the Caden Ellises to develop and have the time and have the opportunity that they were the Caden Ellises and had that. So let the young guys show, and if they don't show it, then bring them in. And I'm cool with that. But I definitely am not with you on the just swapping out Ramczyk and Trevor Penning. I don't get that one at all. Platypus says I have confidence in DA as a DC, but still don't have faith in him as a head coach. Ready to be wrong with that. I mean, that's where I am as well, Platypus. Look, I'm a firm believer that you are who your record says you are. And Dennis Allen has never had a winning record as a head coach. At the same time, if we want to be fair, he also had his most productive season as a head coach last year with New Orleans. Like, remember, he's had 3 head coaching years in his career. They were all with Oakland / now the Las Vegas Raiders. And he won 8 total games in 3 seasons. He was fired after the first 4 games of the third season, and they lost all 4 of those. So the most he'd ever won in a single season was 4. He won 7 last year. That is significantly better. None of that makes you go, wow, amazing, but it does show hopefully a trend in the he's gotten better than he was before direction. Also, one area that he has actually you want to give some credit to where it's due. One thing he's actually been really, really good at is challenges. In his history, he is actually 11 for 15 in challenging as a head coach. That's one of the best percentages of all coaches in terms of challenges. So maybe he's getting slightly better, but nothing that he's done so far should make you go, I trust in him. If you don't have a coach that has a winning record, you can't say you trust in him. That's one thing that we could say about Sean Payton. He had a winning record no matter what side of the field was. It was preseason, postseason, regular season. He showed that he could be trusted. Could he be trusted to win a Super Bowl every year? No. But he showed that he could be trusted. And until DA does that, you don't trust him. But at least moving in a direction last year, we'll just have to wait and see. Gerald says, I was also looking to kick Peyton inside on obvious rushing situations, NASCAR packages like Cam, Breezy Turner, and Foskey Granderson coming forward. I'm okay with that. I think Passignon also has shown the ability to do that same thing that you just referenced. I guess I have no issue. I don't think the NASCAR pack. One thing, look, all right, let me clarify. I think New Orleans can manufacture pressure if they need to. They can find the sacks. The sacks aren't going to be the problem. And I think last year is a perfect example of that, because last year was actually one of the least blitzing years in the history of DA. Not just with New Orleans, ever. You go to any time DA has led a defense. Last year is actually one of the least times they've ever blitzed. They had 2 players in the entire team who blitz more than 20 times. 5 players in total who blitz more than 10. That's it. That is historically ridiculously low for him. You go back just a couple years ago. Last year, Demario Davis is listed with SIS having blitzed 24 times. You go back to 2020, he blitzed 90 times. So DA made massive adjustments to his defense to account for a lack of talent and predominantly a lack of production and talent along that front four. And believe it or not, correcting a lack of talent in the front four is not always blitzing. A lot of times that is putting out better coverage and rely on those covers to allow you to get what you need. That's what he did. He's a little bit less aggressive, and I think that lack of aggression is why you saw such a significant drop in turnovers, but he relied on his elite defenders in the back end to cover up for the fact that the front just wasn't as good as it was before. So you had more coverage sacks, but you did not create or force more problems by the offenses on the opposite side. So you did not get as many turnovers. There weren't as many opportunities to pick balls off, to get pick sixes, to force fumbles. There weren't the opportunities there that there has been in previous years. And I think that's something to look for as before. Mr. G, I see you in the audience. If you got a comment on whether you think our top 2 draft picks can get immediate contribute, or if you have a comment on MT and Camp, feel free to jump on in, request the stage, and we'll bring you on up. I'm here for it. So, look, exactly. He's here. Man wants to get on the stage. He has a very strong opinion. I know Mr. G does. So, come on. What you got for us, Mr. G? What do you think? How you doing, by the way? You're muted, so just make sure you unmute yourself. Mr. G, I feel like the last time you were on, you forgot.
Here we go.
There you go. Hey.
Hey.
All right.
Just wanted to say to my buddy, hello to my buddy TJ.
You mean the Michael Thomas hater? Yeah, he's here. Are
we just talking just the first 2 draft picks, or just anything at all?
I mean, we can kind of expand on it. I think the first 2 are really big. I would also, if you can mute the show in the background because it's feeding back. I would also, if you can mute the show in the background because it's feeding back. I would also, if you can mute the show. It's looping hardcore. Can you mute it for me, Mr. G? Thank you. All right.
Better?
Yes, much. So I really don't. I think in terms of who's going to contribute to the team the most early on, I don't think the Saints have a choice. It has to be these 2 guys, right? Like, there's some great draft picks I think could be potentially great this year. I think A.T. Perry could be a very good contributor in the future. I'm excited to see what that is. I think Saldiveri is one that I've actually been very vocal how excited I am. But in terms of who's going to contribute immediately because they have to, you got 2 defensive linemen who is really tough to envision them not either starting or both, playing 40% of the snaps at their position in game 1. And because of that, we really need to, I think, take a look and see, can this improve what was a problem on the team last year? And does it open up more doors to blitz from that nickel corner, blitz from the linebackers, and bring up those turnover rates, which was probably the worst turnover rate in DA's history?
True. Another guy is Miller. The running back is Miller.
I mean, again, I think that
we
he
haven't
will.
heard much about the other one that was undrafted.
In terms of running back?
In terms of what?
Who undrafted? Like the running back? Like Ellis Merriweather or Roderick Thompson?
Thompson. The running back Thompson.
I think it's going to be real easy to fall in love with another undrafted running back for them to only play like 10 snaps the entire season. It's tough for me to get excited about undrafted running backs, man. Like, realistically, that's happened twice, and the last time it really happened was a decade ago. So I know we fall in love with them, and we have like some of these UDFA RBs that we're just convinced are going to pop off, but that's not what the Saints have been doing recently. They've not been using these UDFA running backs to pop off.
So at least Miller, the 3rd round draft pick, he looks like he's going to be good.
He does. I just don't think he's going to play a ton of snaps. You're not going to play him ahead of Jamal Williams or AK, and unless the AK suspension actually comes down, that doesn't really open up any snaps. So I think you're going to see Miller, but he's not going to. Week 1, I'd be shocked if he's playing as much as Brian is week 1.
Yeah, not week one. Okay, early. But it depends on AK's availability for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't know how that case is going to happen, and we've seen in recent, history some of these cases just never turning into suspensions. I mean, it's hard to imagine that happening here because everybody's like seen the reports, seen the video. But one thing we've learned about the American justice system, money goes a long way. So, I mean, until we actually see a suspension laid down, we're going to wait until we see a suspension laid down.
The wide receiver core has a lot of bodies there, a lot of big bodies, good bodies. I was just watching Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good at contested catches. I'm not sure if he doesn't have a big amount of stats, but on his contested catches and sometimes in the yak, he's good at that also.
I don't even think he makes the team. Guys you sign in May don't make the team. There's a reason they got signed in May. I mean, it might, but if he does, he's the veteran that replaces Traquan, and they still keep a veteran. Just
Hey, can't hear this.
you'd have to keep 6 wide receivers to me to keep James Washington. He has to surpass several names. I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, we'll see what it looks like in camp. But last year, obviously dealing with the injury, didn't really play and didn't come back to the very end of Dallas's year. Then they didn't use him at all. And you're not going to let A.T. Perry try to go to the practice squad because he'll get sniped. Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, you can't do anything with Michael Thomas. So there's 4 guaranteed. You got Brian Edwards, who feels like a guarantee simply from the reason that Derek Carr wanted him. So that's 5. And they did carry 6 wide receivers going into last year. If they do it, then, okay, that 6th spot is now Keith Kirkwood, Traquan Smith, James Washington, Shaquan Davis, and Malik Flowers. And out of those, I would lean Malik Flowers because I figure special teams is where he's going to contribute the most and probably in a better way than James Washington. But James could just come off and like make it to where you can't cut him. And honestly, that's probably what he's going for, to be so good in camp you can't cut him. But as of right now, I'd say, no, I don't even think he makes the team. NTR says, all I can hope for is progress with DA and Carmichael. If they get 25 to 30% better each season, winning 2 or 3 more games each year, my confidence will go up. I'll be honest, NTR, I don't even say they need 30%. If you want New Orleans to be a playoff team, they need to be 10% better than they were last year. That's it, 10%. Now, obviously, our aspirations are Super Bowl, right? We want Super Bowls. But I don't think jumping straight to Super Bowl predictions is fair for anybody coming over and taking over a team. So I'm going to say 10%. I would probably say that you need them to be between 30 and 40% better to be legitimate Super Bowl team. And maybe they can pop off and do that. But the first goal is always, can you get into the playoffs? And then you go from there. I do think that this team has playoff talent on the roster. And I think defensively, they have a playoff level defense. And even though I'm not a huge fan so far of DA's head coaching style, I will say, end of the day, I don't blame DA for how bad the offense was. I blame Carmichael. So if Carmichael go in second year running this offense by himself, maybe he can get better. Guys can get better. That's what you're hoping for. No Cap says, do you think the Saints whiffed on not being more aggressive, getting Mingo? I think he'll be better than Perry. What about you? I don't think it's that big of a deal, honestly. I really don't. Could the Saints have used him? Yeah. I mean, hell, I liked him. I talked about it in the pre-draft process. Do I think that the Saints whiffed? Nah. I would not say the Saints whiffed in not getting Mingo. But do I think that he could be a player who contributes in terms of I liked him, I thought he could fit really well with the team? For sure. And I'm not going to like revise history and like pretend that I didn't want him, because I talked about him on the show. I thought that he could be, a provider for this team. I thought that he fit really well. But at the same time, I thought A.T. Perry fit well too. So it wasn't like that I thought that, Mingo was like the guy. I just thought that there were several players that fit this team, and he was one of them. But I don't think that they like missed, because he went right before you selected Foskey anyway. So let's just say in theory, that's what happened. The only way to have gotten Mingo would have been to take him in the first round. And I did not think that he was a first round wide receiver. I just didn't. I would honestly rather have taken Brian Bresee over Jonathan Mingo in the first. So I don't think it was a whiff. I think that, sure, I liked Mingo, and I think that he is going to be a good player. I hope he's not a good player against New Orleans because he is playing for Carolina, but I don't think it was a whiff. I don't think it was a whiff. Trade for Kenneth Murray. Why? I mean, if you all look, we can trade for whoever. Saints do have cap space. Remember, though, I want to point this out. Remember the rule. And I brought this up before. You forget about it. You can roll over extra cap space. So if you've got 10, 15 million extra cap right now, why even make a move? Roll that over to next year and use that for next year. I don't want to necessarily spend or pick up any contract unless I absolutely have to. And I do realize that I say all the time, the goal is to win a Super Bowl, and you make whatever move makes you a Super Bowl winner. But I don't really see any of those moves available. And I think long term, it's definitely be nicer to carry over that 10 mil. That's just me. I don't really see any move that I would want this team to make right now that is feasible, that changes them and makes them just this Super Bowl contender. Because the things that will be good or bad for the team this year are unknowns. You know, Derek Carr will either be a significant upgrade at quarterback, or he'll play just how Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston did, and we'll be upset with how he's underperforming. The things that need to get better from last year's team that were bad, no move you can make in free agency right now, or, well, not even really free agency, no move you can make now in the offseason makes them better. My opinion. There's nothing you can go after right now that makes this team any better besides the question marks they already have that they tried to do to make them better. I thought they needed to get better at quarterback. I thought they needed to get better at coaching. I thought they needed to get better at skill positions and key positions. One of the key positions, defensive end, went after it. One of the key positions, defensive tackle. They went after it 3 times. I love what they did. They picked up a depth DT, a starting DT, and another starting DT. But these are all question marks. Like in terms of moves New Orleans made, New Orleans is one of the rare times that you can say a team literally hit every single need they had. Every single need. All of them. They didn't miss on anything. Now you just got to see if it actually pans out. Now you got to see if it pans out. And you go from there. You know, and I see Lester brings up in chat, what about Kenny Golladay? Former Pro Bowler, wide receiver. He's going to be, 30 this year? So older wide receiver, veteran. Has had 2 great years in his past with Detroit. Nothing really with New York. I think he was a starter his first year with New York, and last year is mostly a backup. And last year, I don't think he actually did very well at all. I'd have to go look up his stats. But would I bring him in to be a camp body? Sure. When I see Kenny Golladay, like today's Kenny Golladay, and I think this is an issue because the same reason people keep bringing up Quan Alexander. What you remember from a player 4 years ago isn't necessarily who they are today. And when I look at Kenny Golladay, I don't see a guy who takes the first 4 spots that I currently have at wide receiver, which is Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry. I think those 4 have to be deadlocked in, no questions asked. And I think Brian Edwards has a legitimate argument to be number 5 on that list and also locked in no matter what, which means you have to keep 6 wide receivers to be that guy, which means that's probably going to be a special teamer, which is why I lean Malik Flowers, maybe Kawan Baker, Keith Kirkwood, Traquan Smith. Depends on what logic you end up going with. So where do you even put Kenny Golladay? Somebody's got to fall off to keep Kenny Golladay. And I'm not saying that that's impossible. I'm just saying, where's the need? You know, and again, I think New Orleans made every potential move they could realistically make. And there are many Sean Payton years where this didn't happen. So I'm giving a little bit of credit to Dennis Allen in the front office right now. New Orleans made every potential move they could make at every position besides changing the offensive coordinator to get better from last year. And if you want to hold them for the offensive coordinator one, that's fine. But you definitely don't look like an appealing market to have a first-year OC and you just get rid of them. So, I mean, not everybody's going to agree with the perception argument, but the perception argument is definitely real. I mean, and keep in mind that the year you even signed Carmichael 2 years ago, nobody else was coming here anyway. Like Pete Carmichael was like, well, damn, Pete, you said you were leaving, but would you mind staying? So I don't even know how many people were actually an option for you anyway, unless you really went with an unknown, like a guy out of college who doesn't have a big name. Because we talked about this in the pre-draft process and in the beginning of the offseason. The big names in college football in terms of offensive minds are already college head coaches and that are making 8 to 10 million a year. You're not paying an offensive coordinator to do that. And you're not signing a guy to come in and, move laterally. So you would have had to have offered some form of promotion, right? And the only promotion you could have offered was, assistant head coach, which is exactly what ended up happening with Eric Bieniemy. But you actually got to see, can Eric Bieniemy be successful now? I've talked about rather would have had Eric Bieniemy than Pete Carmichael, but making him assistant head coach, obviously the team wasn't cool with that. But I mean, realistically, there wasn't even many moves to be made. And this is also assuming Eric Bieniemy would have even wanted to come to New Orleans. And I think too often we look at this in a vacuum because realistically, nobody wanted to come to New Orleans. And it's quite possible Eric Bieniemy also got that phone call and was like, nah, I'm good. Because coming to New Orleans for Bieniemy, there's no upward mobility there. If he would have come to New Orleans, they're not making him the head coach anytime soon. So he would have been assistant head coach, but that would have been just something on his resume. Because he's not going to be the head coach because this team is probably going to ride DA for a minimum of 4 years unless he just starts bombing. So unless DA starts going 3-14, you're probably going to get him at least 4 years. I mean, they're going to give him a legitimate 3 to 4 year run. Going to the Commanders, Ron Rivera, who is 1 billion years old, wouldn't be super shocking because he's 62. Wouldn't be super shocking if it becomes one of those like hands off the reins at some point to Eric Bieniemy to become the head coach. And I just think it would have been a very lateral move for Bieniemy. He's already sitting under Andy Reid, and sure, maybe he has a little bit more autonomy in New Orleans, but I think what he really wants is to be a head coach, and I don't think New Orleans probably gets him any closer to that. So we'll just wait and see. But again, I have to wait and see what the offense itself looks like. And if you're going to help out Pete Carmichael, what do? You upgrade his talent, and you upgraded his talent at wide receiver. You upgraded his talent. You did that last year. You upgraded his talent at quarterback. You have reinvested in the offensive line now 2 straight years, and I do believe that Saldivari is an investment in your offensive line. You have upgraded the tight end position, at least on paper. You see how it actually falls out and rolls out, and you've upgraded the running back room by giving not only a instant boost in terms of your number 2 is superior, and no shade thrown at who I believe is one of the top running backs in team history, but Jamal Williams now is better than Mark Ingram. It just is. Now, I will say, personal opinion, Jamal Williams last year, how good he is hyperinflated by his touchdown totals. He's not a top 3 running back in the NFL. Just because he led the league in TDs does not mean he was a top 5 running back or a top 3 running back, but he was a good running back, and I think that he fits really, really well here in New Orleans. I'm excited about it. But I do think the fact that he got 17 touchdowns is a little bit misleading. He's not that good. Like, he's not 17 touchdowns, and he paired that with 2,000 total yards. He was an 1,100 yard from scrimmage player who scored 17 rushing touchdowns because every time they got inside the 5, they fed it to the man who's big, powerful, and strong, and he punched it in. And that's great. But I think that he's a great 1-2 punch with Alvin Kamara, and I think that Kendra Miller is your hope that he becomes AK of the future because AK, as a running back, does not have 5-10 years left in him. Again, they made all the moves they could, sans getting rid of Pete Carmichael, to be a better offense. Now you got to see if it actually happens. Mike says, anybody on the offensive side of the Saints coach staff looks promising in the future for offensive coordinator. Specifically on the Saints staff? Keep in mind that I'm not there. Like, I don't I don't know those guys like ridiculously well, but the only one that I can like immediately name would be Ronald Curry, and that's it. He's currently your passing game coordinator and your QB coach. Um, Doug Marrone has literal experience doing the job, but you don't call Doug Marrone the future. I mean, Doug Marrone has been coaching in the league since like the early 2000s. This is a veteran who is not an up and comer name. He's a stout vet. Probably the only person on the offensive roster that I would say, hey, maybe watch out for being OC is Ronald Curry. Maybe Cody Burns, but I'd have to say Ronald Curry. So, Les says, do you think the Saints let our OC bring on more people of his choosing to help him on the offensive staff? Lester, I don't think that anybody's been stopping Carmichael from bringing in people of his choosing now. In fact, a lot of the people that he's working with, he's worked with in the past. So, I don't think he has any issue with Doug Marrone being there on the O-line coach. I don't think he has any issue with Ronald Curry being there at QB. I don't think he has any issue with Cody Burns. I think he loves that Jari Evans is now the an offensive assistant, offensive line assistant. I think he's completely fine with DJ Williams. I think he likes Mike Martinez, who's the assistant to the head coach. I think Jordan Trailer, one of the other offensive assistants. And these low guys who do a lot of the grunt work. Kevin Petrie has been there for several years now. I think he's completely okay with that. I don't think that he's like being withheld choices. I think he's an integral part of that offense. If anything, I think he has more input than he ever has, because when Sean Payton was here, it was 100% Sean Payton's game and Pete Carmichael was contributing. Now it's 100%, maybe 85, 90% Pete Carmichael's offense. And sure, he's not the head coach, but I'm pretty sure last year gave you a clear indication that DA is running his side of the ball, making sure it is what it needs to be, and then having guys help him out. And I get what you're saying, Lester, but at the same time, you find me a coach in the NFL who's at a coordinator or head spot who humbles themselves and say, yeah, I suck at this. Let's bring in somebody. Name them. Name them. Because when Sean Payton was calling triple, quadruple reverses that turned into flea flickers and throwing the ball with running backs to wide receivers all in the same play, you would think there was somebody that's like, yo, this is really cool, but how about we never run it unless you're coaching in the Pro Bowl? That man took that type of stuff to the field in a real NFL game. I think realistically, coaches aren't looking at their deficiencies and going, I should bring in somebody else. What they're doing is, I need to get better at that, but I'm confident I can be better. One thing that you will run into with most coaches in the NFL and most players in the NFL, they're very confident individuals. Even if they're quiet, maybe they're more demure and stuff, but they're still very confident in who they are. They're confident in their knowledge, and that means that they can be confident to a fault where they are wrong in their confidence. But I think that he already has guys who contribute in that. And I think one of those guys that I mentioned is Ronald Curry. I think he contributes very heavily in that. Sure, can always be better. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying I think that what they chose to do with him is to give him better talent. Because last year, and I'm not making an excuse, so please don't take what I'm about to say as me making an excuse for Pete Carmichael, because I've got way too many episodes of this show where I was very clear about my opinions of a lot of his play calling. I've also given him credit towards the end of the year where I thought he started doing a little bit better, but I've already been very open and honest what I thought about his play calling. That said, let's take a step back and let's just be objective and look at what was working on the Saints offense last year, especially because of injuries and issues. Your best wide receiver was Chris Olave, a rookie who has not even reached his peak. Your best tight end was Juwan Johnson, a converted wide receiver who popped off and did fantastic, but is still a converted wide receiver, and in my opinion has still not become the complete tight end that he will be, and he hopefully hits that this year. But a converted UDFA wide receiver should not be your best tight end. I'm just sorry. And that is not me trying to take a shot at Juwan Johnson. He's an amazing story. He's actually doing damn well. But if your best player at a position is a guy who played another position and wasn't even drafted for that position, that is actually a sign of a bad team, okay? That's not taking a shot at Jawan. That's taking a shot at the team not having the talent to be successful. Your next best wide receiver was Rashid Shaheed, another rookie receiver. And this one wasn't even a high profile guy. Then you had Alvin Kamara as your third overall receiver. And that's just Alvin Kamara being Alvin Kamara, who didn't even have a great year last year because he was so focused on. And then your fourth best wide receiver last year is TJ's favorite New Orleans Saints receiver of all time in Traquan Smith. So the point I'm making is, yeah, I believe Carmichael deserves a lot of flack. I believe there was a lot of things that Pete Carmichael did not do well that he could have done well. But at the same time, there was a severe talent deficiency because Landry did not work out. Michael Thomas did not work out. He did not come back and he was not healthy. So your top two receivers that you basically got in free agency, so to speak. I mean, you brought into the team because they were essentially new. Michael Thomas hadn't played with that set last year. Landry had the top two that you brought in didn't work out. Your tight end that you drafted to develop never worked out. You've ended up trading him, and that turned into A.T. Perry. So last year you had a severe talent deficiency on offense in terms of playmaking, right? That is something that you went off and you focused on rectifying this year. And then you also hope that the young guys who did look good last year take further steps forward. You hope Johnson, Olave, and Rashid continue to get better. But you're also hoping that Michael Thomas does actually return. But if he doesn't, okay, we didn't just bring in one. We also now have Foster Moreau that you hope contributes. We also now have Ron Edwards, who has experience with the quarterback that he's playing with, has rapport, even if he's not elite. You drafted A.T. Perry to come in after drafting Kawaan Baker last year. A.T. Perry definitely has a better scouting profile coming in the league than Kawaan Baker did. So you are trying to give this team more while also getting another running back so that Alvin Kamara is not the only guy, and getting a second running back to not only help Alvin Kamara, but then also maybe give Alvin Kamara space and a future past Kamara. So you made a pretty solid effort to fix problems, and that doesn't even count, addressing the offensive line, which they did. So all these things as a whole basically are saying one thing. They are trying to rebuild the offense so that Pete Carmichael has the best chance to have success and prove that he can be better. Again, I think that in terms of objectivity, this offense had this entire team had one of the best off seasons they've ever had on paper. It has to actually play out for us to really give it a lot of credit. But this was a fantastic offseason for them. Now you actually have to see it work. But in terms of what they did in the offseason, it was a fantastic offseason. Now we got to see it pan out. And that's also why I was so big on talking about the 2 draft picks tonight, because for the defensive side of the ball, for DA to return to his brand of what I would call elite, because I think one thing to give DA love on, I still don't know if he's a great head coach, but I can tell you he's a damn great defensive coordinator right now. One thing that he did really well in the past was he helped with turnovers. Now, I wouldn't say his defenses are known for, turnovers, but last year, New Orleans was the 31st ranked team in turnovers a game. 5 years prior, the year before that, 2021, they were 8th. The year before that, they were 3rd, 2nd, 7th, and 9th. Gotta sneeze. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, y'all. Had to sneeze. So you had 5 straight years where they were a top 10 team in turnover margin. Now, part of that was the offense wasn't turning the ball over very much. Last year, the offense didn't turn the ball over a ton anyway, but the defense was able to produce those. And I think part of that was the fact that they were able to be more aggressive. And aggressive defenses may give up some more yards, but they also usually take the ball away more. You still had a top 10 defense last year. In points allowed, you were 9th, and in yards allowed, you were 5th. But you were also 31st in turnovers. So this team did a lot of things they needed to do to get better, but a lot of the things they did are question marks. Foskey is a question mark. I think he's going to play significant snaps this year. I think if you had to give a snap prediction, it is not a stretch to say that he's going to play between 500 and 700 of the defensive snaps this year if he's healthy. I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think the same thing with Brian Brizzi. Another guy that I can easily see playing 400 to 600 snaps in that interior defensive line, simply because you don't have anybody. You drafted the guys to be the guys. Also means that there will be a learning curve. That means that there will be, listen to me, y'all. I told y'all the same thing last year with the safeties. You brought in 2 vets. I told you it wasn't going to be the same to start the season off. Those safeties needed time. Same thing on that front 4. They're going to need time to get to where they're going. But you did everything you needed to do. You addressed defensive end, which you had to do. You addressed wide receiver, which you had to do. You addressed quarterback, tight end, running back. They did what they had to do. There is no hole on this team that wasn't filled. Good to see you, Daryl. Good to see you, Jerry. NTR says the running back room is the deepest it's been in quite some time. And again, I always say that it is because you've got 3 guys that you know can contribute right now. Miller, Williams, Alvin Kamara. You still got Eno Benjamin, who's on the roster. You got Sir Roderick Thompson, who's there, that I know some people are, they do like. They're excited about. And then you've got Ellis Merriweather. And that doesn't count Adam Prentice at fullback, who, I'm a hit or miss on Adam Prentice at fullback. I don't really care either way. I don't think he's the best fullback we've had, or anything. He's just kind of got whatever. Maybe he pops off this year too. Hey, shout out to fullbacks. I appreciate we actually have one on the roster. There's a long time where NFL teams didn't have one at all. So, yeah, I mean, running back room looks good. I would say the wide receiver room looks deep, but it doesn't look elite, and I'm okay with that. After many, many years of this wide receiver room just being straight up bad, I don't care that my wide receiver room doesn't look elite, but damn does it look finally like 6 legitimate guys who can catch footballs. Like, I really feel like I can name 6 guys who can contribute to this team, either offensively or special teams, and like I actually mean it. And keep in mind that people are going to shout out Rashid Shaheed, and y'all did on the last pod. And I'm not saying y'all are wrong, but remember, Rashid Shaheed didn't even start last year on the roster. Because last year there was no depth at all. And if there's one position left that I think there is no depth in, right now there's no depth in linebacker, but I'm also not terribly worried about that. Mario Davis is an Iron Man. Hopefully, knock on wood, he doesn't really get injured. And if they do have to fill in with somebody, I think that one thing, we talked about coaching earlier. Last year, I was really impressed with Michael Hodges. I think Michael Hodges, when you lost Nolan at linebacker coach, there's a lot of questions on were they going to be able to continue to develop and produce good linebacker play. And obviously with Demario Davis there, you're going to see Demario Davis be good, right? Like that's not really, I think we're all pretty confident in that. Like we're going to see it be good. But I think Michael Hodges has done a fantastic job with linebackers so far. And he's been in charge of that since 2020, right? So this is his 3rd year. I think his 3rd year. So with that in mind, I'm loving it. I'm really excited because he was the assistant in 2019, 2017, 2018. I think 2020 was his first year. So this is going to be his 3rd or 4th. Leading the club, I think he's done a good job. I think Caden Ellis's development is in part due to him. I think that the quick development of Pete Warner is due to him. So hopefully that also translates to these other guys that we're talking about positively, like DeMarco Jackson, who we know that they really liked last year, like Nick Anderson, who I'm excited about. People hate on him for the fact that he's 5'10 and a half, but you know what? I'm going to give him some love. The fact that he wears a Sam Mills jersey before his pro day and is really trying to pop off. He's got that heart of the tiger, eye of the King Kong, whatever you want to say, stupid song lyrics from 50 years ago before I was born. I don't care. I think that you've got a guy who can make that work. And you still got Andrew Dowell, who other people liked, last year. So I go with all these. Do I think it's deep? No. But do I want to see what happens? Yes. If this was a team that played a traditional base, I would be a little bit worried, not going to lie. But this isn't a team that plays in a traditional base. They play a nickel set. So I'm okay with it. What do you think,
Deuce?
Mr. G? Yeah.
Do you think they'll get somebody else to help out the linebacker?
But right now they
In
are
free
full
agency.
on their roster. They did just fill up. They're at 90 out of 90.
Well, okay, but it that can change.
Yeah,
So,
it definitely can. I don't think it's a pressing thing right now. Do I think it's an option? Totally. I really do. I do legitimately think it's an option. But I would then add that I don't think it's pressing either. Because I've got like the Quan Alexander thing multiple times. And I get it. And I actually won't have an issue if that's what they choose to do. I really won't. But at the same time, I think that they have a lot of young guys that they want to give a shot. Whether it's Ty Summers or Anferni Orji or the Nick Anderson, who I'm personally going to be rooting for because I just love the story and I love the heart. I love these local. Let's see. Now, it is kind of funny, though, that we talk about guys taking that step. Dennis Allen was basically asked about Vaughn and was like, yeah, that ain't really happening. But we'll see. Now, Gundam says, need to re-sign Quan Alexander as an X factor. We need him. But I don't think you do. Like, Quan has great energy, sure. But did this team drop off at all because Quan was gone? And they didn't. This defense did not miss Quan Alexander. Can this defense use Quan Alexander? Absolutely. And that's a big difference. That's a big difference. Can they use him? Yes. Did they need him? No. And I think that's just a big thing. I think that if you brought him in, what you would ask him to do is be a sub linebacker, especially on blitz packages. And I'm fine with that. But I don't think if you add Quan Alexander right now, it changes how I see this defense at all. Because what this defense needed was more consistent play from the front four so they didn't rely so much on coverage. It could actually do more blitzing. And I don't really think Quan changes that. I think the only way to change that is actually have better success up front, which drafting 2 guys in the top 40 hopefully helps with that. But I don't think that that's on Quan. I do think he can contribute, but I don't think he makes the team individually better or worse.
Nah.
I'd love to have him just because I love his energy. His energy is amazing. It's infectious. But at the same time, this team has damn good leaders on defense already. I mean, literally all 3 levels. That's not something they're hurting for. DeMario is an amazing leader. Cam's an amazing leader. Honey Badger is a fantastic leader and part of this city. And the way that he looked at Jamal Williams when that man put barbecue sauce on his crawfish was priceless. So, yeah, I think Quan fits in immediately with this team. I think he fits in immediately with the locker room. I think people would love him to be here, including fans. But do they need him? You don't need to sign him right now in May. Seriously, if you feel like nobody pops off, like if you're looking at the roster right now, if you want a guy who consistently updates the 90-man roster and like always has who's on it, who's not on it, check out John Sigler with USA Today. He's always got the most up-to-date roster of anybody that I know that covers the team. And he'll give you all the linebackers that they currently have, which is, I think, we're at 12 right now. We were at 12. We might have gone down. We're at 12, 13, something like that.
This is it's going to be interesting with going from 90 down to 53.
See, the Saints were actually one of the ones that pushed for that. The Saints were
Really?
actually, there were, it was the Saints and I think a handful of other teams pushed that at the owners' meeting that what they wanted to do was stop the cuts from going like 90 down to 85 and then whittling it down before getting to 53. They just wanted, and the reason they wanted this from their perspective is, sure, the small cuts might work for some teams, but New Orleans wants more time. And I think this kind of speaks to what I'm saying. They want as much time as possible with every player that they can get and then make their decisions. Because when you're whittling it down week by week, well, what if in those other 2 weeks it would have really happened for that guy that it just wasn't clicking yet? And they needed that extra week or two, and then bam, the defense actually, like, it just fell into place and it was there, and then boom. You made the roster, but you wouldn't have made it if you got cut 2 weeks ago because it wasn't there for you yet. And I think that's kind of where DA is coming from, is give those young guys as much potential as possible to prove that they deserve a roster spot, and then we make our 53. But yeah, the New Orleans Saints are one of the teams that co-signed that recommendation before the owners' meeting and ended up getting it passed. And Gundam, I get what you're saying, because Gundam says, I'm looking at Quan from a fan perspective. Rev, you're a tier 1 analyst that sees it from a pro perspective. And I appreciate the compliment. I don't put myself in a tier 1 anymore. I think that when I was hardcore at it, my arrogance, my pride might have done that. But I'm not tier 1, man. But I appreciate the compliment. I really do. But I get what you're saying. Look, it is really easy to be a fan of the Quan Alexanders of this league, no matter what team you're on. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Quan is hands down one of my favorite Saints players the past 10 years. At the same time, I've got a lot of favorite players the past 10 years who also at the same time were not incredible contributors. Like, they were good, but the team didn't need them. Like, when they left for whatever reason, the team didn't just fall off the face of the earth. Like, speaking of the New York Jets, if I had to pick one guy that if I could bring back their 4-year-old self to this team right now, Sheldon Rankins. Now, obviously, Sheldon suffered a massive injury, and I don't think he's ever fully recovered from that. Like, truly, if we're talking about old Saints who were here 4 years ago, who, if I could bring back how they were to now, Sheldon Rankins is not high on people's charts for falling in love with. He doesn't show off that same Quan level of energy. But in terms of impact and play, 2018 Sheldon Rankins is one of the best three-tech defensive tackles the Saints have ever had. He wasn't Leroy Glover good, but he was damn good. He wasn't too far off. I mean, he wasn't 20 sack season Leroy Glover. That's just special. But damn, he was good. And that next year he had that massive energy, and it all went away. So yeah.
That Fairley was another one that was really good, but
yeah,
injury.
He had the heart issue. So again, no disrespect at all meant towards Quan. I 100% give it. And like Ben brings up Von Bell. Von Bell's another one. Like, I'm completely okay with Honey Badger being here. But in terms of strong safeties that come down the box and hit, Von Bell, there's a reason that man is still in the league and has had very good success outside of New Orleans. And you don't see a ton of Saints people having success outside New Orleans. Usually they go somewhere and they're not that great. That man had 3 good years in Cincinnati. That man is working on his 8th year as a starter in the NFL. How many Saints players can you say that is at Carolina? And I hope he gets absolutely torched.
T-Rex.
Yeah, I mean, remember the days when Saints players would go play for another team and they sucked? We're like, damn, Sean Payton really turned them into something awesome. Now we got a lot of good Saints players going somewhere and just doing good.
Yeah.
Shout out to them. Happy for them. We are right at the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to read off, one more question and then hop off. Bim says, let's be real, Rankin stayed hurt. I think you're misremembering. I think you're remembering the end of Rankin's time in NOLA. And I don't think that's exactly fair to him. You remember, because remember, what was it? Right in the playoffs, he had that massive injury. And because you're remembering 2019, and he never got healthy after that. But 2016, he was splitting time with Fairley. Then, full-time starter 2017. Wasn't 100% amazing, but was, oh God, you can see it. 2018, it hit his 3rd year in the league. Full-time starter, played 16 games, 8 sacks and a forced fumble as a 3-tech in the NFL. That is beyond elite numbers for a 3-tech. Like if Brian Breezy does that one time, he's an elite status as a 3-tech. Because that's hard to do at that position. And then the injury happened, and now you remember him struggling. So he had 2 years of injury, but he also just had 2 healthy years in New York. He played 16 games in 2021, and he played 15 games last year with New York. So I get what you're saying, Bill, but remember, he got injured, and he never looked the same in New Orleans, and sometimes it takes guys 2-3 years to pop off from like a big injury. But he was healthy in New Orleans, and he was good, and he contributed for 3 years before a dramatic injury sidelined him, and he played at a ridiculously high level, too. So, NTR says, I hope the Saints defense can force more fumbles against opposing offenses like our 2019 season. NTR, I think the big key to that is the defensive line being healthy and more consistent so that they can be more aggressive as a defensive whole. Like one thing that Chauncey did so well when he was here, blitzing from the corner spot. One thing that our linebacking core has done so well, and honestly, and surprisingly, you saw not as much of last year with New Orleans, specifically Demario Davis, even though Demario Davis had a hell of a year, you saw a lot less blitzing from New Orleans last year. Again, remember, I popped off a stat for y'all. Demario Davis had 90 blitzes like 3 years ago. Last year, he had 26. Now, he put up 6.5 sacks, which was a career high for him. Fantastic. Dude took the most opportunities that was presented to him. But you really saw those numbers that New Orleans had kind of become known for really kind of fall backward. So hopefully you can see them be more aggressive because of improved front four play. And I think some of that is going to come from just being healthy. Hopefully that's the case. But look, we're going to wrap because we're over an hour. And I appreciate everybody. TJ, I'm going to mute the stage just because I don't want to get interrupted. But I appreciate y'all being here. I think that it was very kind of y'all to jump in. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the chatters. We'll be back Tuesday. I'm also going to be doing another film study. The next film study is going to be, one, if you haven't already, join the Discord, and you can request what you want. I'm debating between A.T. Perry, Saldivari, and Kendra Miller. I think most people are going to want Kendra Miller, but me, I'm kind of struggle busting on what I want to pick. I can't honestly make up my mind. I like both of them. Also, if you want to help out the channel, you want to get more film study, you want to have more chats like this, check out, if you haven't already, go check out our merch store. Support us. You get the mug. We got a couple t-shirts. I'm also going to be mocking up a hoodie, and we'll get some of that logo work done. We're also going to design a new t-shirt so that y'all can get more of the Saints plays. And that way you look like and are the smartest at the water cooler at the office. I think you're going to enjoy it. I do. So join the Discord. Let me know. And then on Twitter, I will also run a poll where y'all can determine who the next film study is. So appreciate y'all watching. It means the world to me that y'all watch, that y'all enjoy the show. Hopefully you do. If there's anything that I can do to make it better, please let me know. More than happy to do that. So who dat? God bless. Love all of y'all. We'll catch you on the next pod. And we are fading out.